Tonight we journey into the cold, smoky heart of winter, inside a Viking Longhouse. You step in from the biting Nordic wind, expecting warmth and maybe a rustic charm. Instead, you're greeted by thick, suffocating smoke that immediately clogs your throat. The ceiling's low, your head almost brushing its soot-stained beams, and there's no chimney. That's right. Centuries before central ventilation was a thing, these hardy Norse folk just let the smoke drift up and seep out through the thatch. Eventually, maybe. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step inside and it's as if your senses are being mugged. The air is heavy, pungent with wet wool, stale meat, animal waste, and the sharp sting of burning peat. The Longhouse isn't long in the modern sense. It's more like a stretched out shoebox with walls made of timber and turf. You think, at least it's shelter, but then your eyes begin to sting and you wonder if you're being lightly smoked like tomorrow's haddock. The Longhouse belongs to a moderately successful chieftain, translation. He owns more than 2 cows, and his wife has a comb made of antler. Inside, around 20 people shuffle about in tunics made from wool and animal skins. They're not staring at you, but you're clearly the outsider. Your insulated jacket might as well be a flashing neon sign that says, "I have soft hands and 0 survival skills." Historians still argue whether smoke was intentionally left to fill the upper house for warmth, pest control, or simply because chimneys weren't on their radar yet. Whatever the reason, you're not adapting. Your lungs beg for clean air. Your eyes water. You try to breathe through your mouth, but the taste, burnt fat and old cheese, is even worse. And then there's the lighting, or lack of it. The only real light source is the hearth in the centre, which casts a flickering glow and makes every corner look like something's lurking in it. You squint through the murk and catch glimpses. Tools, shields, maybe a dog or 2. Or was that a very hairy child? The floor beneath your boots is uneven, a mix of packed earth, straw, and whatever people haven't bothered to clean for weeks. You don't dare look too closely. At least it's not freezing in here, but that's only because your body's swapping cold for a slow roast. Someone hands you a wooden cup. You accept it cautiously and sniff. It smells like sour apples and regret. It's mead, a kind of honey wine that tastes better the more you forget hygiene regulations. You nod, trying to appear grateful, and sip. It's warm, fermented, and not nearly alcoholic enough to make the next 12 hours bearable. Nearby, a pair of children wrestle in what looks like a pile of straw and goat hair. One of them has a wooden sword and is screaming "Tyr!" with terrifying conviction. You back away, forgetting for a second that your coat makes you roughly the size of a sail and bump into something, or someone, behind you. You turn, slowly. It's a man with a beard so thick it could probably trap birds. He grunts. You freeze. He reaches past you, grabs a hunk of dried meat from a shelf you hadn't noticed, and walks off without a word. You try to breathe again. You can't. Here's a fun tidbit. Viking longhouses had no interior walls, not one. Everything, eating, sleeping, arguing, giving birth, happened in the same open space. Some scholars think fabric partitions were used sometimes, but there's little evidence they did much more than offer the illusion of privacy. So no, there's no quiet room for you to go sulk in. You're here now, this is it. You take another sip of your drink and scan the rafters. Above you meat hangs from hooks to dry. You squint. Are those intestines? Maybe best not to know. A chicken clucks from somewhere overhead. You realise it's on the rafter, wobbling along it like a tightrope artist of doom. You inch away before gravity makes a grim joke of the situation. To your left, the Longhouse's matriarch stirs a cauldron suspended over the fire. It bubbles ominously. Whatever's cooking smells meaty, vaguely fishy, possibly dairy adjacent. She catches your eye and grins. You smile back weakly, wondering whether this is the point in the documentary where your modern immune system gives up. The floor creaks under your weight as you take a cautious step toward the fire. The heat is intense. Your front roasts while your back remains numb from the cold. Everyone else seems immune to this discomfort, like human rotisserie chickens hardened by decades of Nordic winters. You, on the other hand, shift awkwardly, trying to find that mythical middle zone between frostbite and sweat lodge. Here's something that rarely makes the history books. Viking longhouses often had benches built into the walls for seating, sleeping, or storing random bits of life. But you're not getting one. Not tonight. Those spots are claimed by the elders, the warriors, and the ones who know which end of a cow is safest to sleep near. You're in the middle, on your feet, slowly cooking like some confused tourist in a time-travel-themed escape room. Outside, the wind howls like it's personally offended that you're still alive. Snow rattles against the walls, the thatch roof hisses occasionally as ice melts and drips through onto unsuspecting heads. You're pretty sure a droplet just landed in your drink. Or was it something else? You hear someone laugh, a booming, hoarse sound. You pretend to laugh too, even though you missed the joke. It doesn't matter. Everyone's already moved on. In this world, you don't have time to be confused. You either adapt fast or you get eaten. Metaphorically, probably. You're trying to warm your fingers near the hearth now, an optimistic effort, given that the fire mainly seems to be heating the ceiling and burning your eyebrows. Your boots, modern and waterproof though they may be, are no match for the cold that snakes up from the packed dirt floor. The heat doesn't travel downward. It's as if warmth is allergic to your toes. They start to throb with that weird, tingly ache that feels like your body issuing a polite warning. Frostbite is sending a courier. Meanwhile, your face is getting too hot. You shift again. Now your back is freezing. You shuffle like you're in an invisible conga line with yourself, just trying to balance the scorch and freeze effect of the fire. No one else is doing this. They're too used to it, or maybe too numb. You envy their indifference to discomfort. The hearth is the centre of everything. Cooking, drying, warmth, gossip, religion, the odd goat accident. It all revolves around this oval pit filled with glowing embers and the occasional lick of flame. One of the older men tosses in a log and the fire pops, sending a spray of sparks up into the air. You flinch. He doesn't. His beard may actually be fireproof by now. There's a huge iron cauldron dangling above the flames. It bubbles ominously. You catch a whiff. Onions, fish. Something vaguely barnyard-esque. Whatever it is, that's dinner. You watch as someone ladles a thick greyish stew into a wooden bowl and hands it to a nearby child, who digs in with fingers that may or may not have recently been inside a sheep. Historians still argue whether Viking winter meals were monotonous out of necessity or sheer practicality. But one thing's certain, boiling everything into unrecognisable slurry was both efficient and apparently character-building you try not to judge. It's hard to be a food snob when your teeth are chattering like castanets. A woman hands you a chunk of dark bread. It's dense and slightly sour. Rye, maybe. She says something in Old Norse. You nod, smile, and pretend to understand. She laughs and moves on. You might have just agreed to marry her cousin. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Viking women often chewed tree bark to clean their teeth. It worked surprisingly well. Their dental hygiene was better than you'd expect for people who routinely used fermented shark as a delicacy. You look around. A teenage boy is scraping his tongue with what looks like a bone shard. You pretend you didn't see that. The stew makes the rounds. You're handed a bowl, wooden, stained and radiating ancient mystery. You stare into it. Floating in the greasy surface are unidentifiable vegetables, a piece of fish, and possibly a bit of hoof. You steel yourself. You take a bite. It's horn. That's the best thing you can say. There's a hint of salt and mud. But your stomach grumbles in reluctant approval. Congratulations. You've survived your first Viking meal. Around the hearth, people huddle in shifting clusters. Someone's mending a net. Someone else is carving what might be a game piece or a toothpick, or possibly a religious idol. It's hard to tell with Viking art. It all leans heavily toward possibly cursed. Two men are arm wrestling, their hands locked like bear traps, grunting through clenched teeth. You silently root for the one with the least blood on his shirt. One man pulls out a lyre, a simple harp-like instrument, and begins plucking a slow, droning melody. It sounds like a lullaby played by someone who has seen too many winters. A woman joins in, singing softly in a language you don't understand but feel deep in your gut. It's beautiful and a little haunting. You suddenly remember your hundreds of years from the nearest space heater. You notice the door flap open briefly. A gust of icy air slices through the longhouse. Everyone winces. A tall, broad-shouldered figure steps in, stomping snow from fur-lined boots. His beard is crusted with frost. He looks around, nods once, and strides to the fire like he owns it. Which, judging by how people clear space for him, he might. Chieftain? Big brother? Local guy who knows how to kill a wolf with a spoon? He sits, pulls off his gloves, and begins slicing dried meat with a knife so sharp it makes your butter knife back home weep in shame. You inch away, not wanting to be mistaken for the evening's entertainment. Here's a thing you hadn't thought about. There's no insulation here, not really. The walls are thick, timber and turf, but the wind finds ways in. It whispers through cracks. You feel it sneaking along your ankles like a lazy ghost. You shift closer to the fire, again risking spontaneous eyebrow combustion. And then it happens. The inevitable. Your stomach gurgles, loudly. A few heads turn. You smile sheepishly. A child giggles. Someone mimics the sound. Great. You've become dinner theatre. You slurp your stew faster, hoping the embarrassment passes as quickly as the mystery meat. People start to settle. Blankets, if you can call them that, are pulled out. Rough woven wool, patched with fur, smelling strongly of history and livestock. You don't have one. You do your best with your jacket and that one itchy scarf you regretted packing. Not anymore. That scarf is now your soulmate. The fire dims a little as fewer logs are added. The orange glow fades into red embers. Shadows stretch and flicker. You hear whispers, occasional snores, a baby fussing. Someone coughs, a deep, wet sound that reminds you just how far you are from antibiotics. You tell yourself it's fine, just atmospheric. You shift your position again, trying to find a spot on the bench that's less splinter-prone. Your feet are still cold, despite the fire and the now barely breathable warmth of so many bodies in one place. You wiggle your toes, not much response. You hope that's just your imagination. Then, from the far corner comes a burst of laughter. Someone's telling a story. You catch fragments. Something about a bear, a drunken uncle, and a very confused priest. You don't need to understand the words to appreciate the rhythm. The storyteller's tone rises and falls like a boat on rough seas, and the longhouse rocks gently with chuckles. The air's thickened again with heat, smoke, and humanity. It's overwhelming, but also, weirdly, cozy. Like being tucked into a blanket woven from discomfort, survival, and a shared sense of, well, we're all in this mess together. And yet your nose is starting to run. Your eyes sting, your stomach's suspicious of the stew, and your boots are slowly fusing with the floor. You're still trying to figure out which part of your body hurts the least when you hear a voice behind you say something that sounds an awful lot like, you're sitting in Grandpa's spot. You don't move right away, mostly because you're hoping you misheard. Maybe Grandpa's spot is a term of endearment, like hot seat or cozy corner. But then the voice repeats, firmer this time, and suddenly someone's tapping your shoulder with what feels suspiciously like a knucklebone. You stand, swiftly, politely, awkwardly. You mumble something like, "Oh, sorry, didn't realise, huge respect for Grandpa," and shuffle a few steps to the left, trying to blend into the shadows. A space opens up near the wall, you take it, and then you understand why no one else was sitting here. The wind sneaks through a crack in the timber and punches you square in the spine. It's like your jacket is made of paper, and worse, this new spot is directly next to a sheep. A very flatulent sheep, who eyes you with mild disdain as if to say, "Welcome to my world, interloper." Viking longhouses were not designed with privacy in mind, or airflow, or really any of the comforts you're used to. The entire structure is one open room, maybe 75 feet long and 20 feet wide if you're lucky. That's 20 or more people, plus animals, all coexisting in a single chamber that functions as kitchen, bedroom, workshop, and restroom. There is no room with a door you can close, no me time, and certainly no do not disturb signs. Historians still argue whether families divided their spaces with curtains or partitions made of wool, but if they did, none of them are in this particular house tonight. Every sound echoes. Every movement is a group activity. You sniffle, and a woman 3 benches away offers you a rag with a knowing smile. You thank her, then immediately regret everything as the rag reveals its gritty texture and lingering scent of garlic and goat. You wipe your nose anyway. This is your life now. Nearby, someone starts snoring. Loudly. It's less gentle night breathing and more harbour freight unloading. You glance over to see a broad-shouldered man curled into the fetal position, blissfully unaware that his nasal symphony is making your teeth vibrate. You try to be charitable. Sleep is survival here. You shift again, feeling the straw beneath you crunch and shift. It's not exactly a mattress, more like a pile of dry grass and old moss layered over a timber bench or sometimes just the floor. It's itchy, it pokes, it smells like compost, but it's what's available. You lie down, or at least attempt to. The space is narrow, your knees bump someone's back. A foot presses into your side. There's a brief shuffle as everyone readjusts like human Tetris. You're now sandwiched between 2 strangers who both radiate the kind of body heat that feels like a slow, cooking meat stew. The fire has settled into a low smoulder, casting the room in a soft red glow. You hear whispering, laughter, a muffled hiccup. Then silence again, broken only by the occasional shift of a body or the disgruntled bleat of a goat. Here's a fun fringe fact. Some Viking households reportedly slept in shifts. One half stayed awake while the other half rested, maintaining the fire and keeping watch against what, you're not entirely sure. Wolves, rival clans, sudden existential dread. Whatever the threat, it means there's always movement, always noise, always someone stepping on your foot while they stumble to find the latrine bucket in the dark. And yes, there is a bucket. It's somewhere along the wall, hopefully not too close to your new sleeping spot. You try not to think about it. You especially try not to think about the fact that the baby just crawled that direction. You attempt to lie still, hoping sleep will come quickly. But your brain is not cooperating. You're hyper-aware of everything. The wool blanket you've been given is scratchy. It smells like smoked cheese and dog fur. Your ear is pressed against wood that creaks with every exhale. Someone's breath tickles your neck. You try to reposition. Big mistake. You accidentally elbow your neighbour in the ribs. He grunts, rolls over, and lets out a sigh that sounds vaguely threatening. Another lovely detail. You're starting to itch. Not from the straw. From something else. Something mobile. Vikings didn't have bug spray, or washing machines, or in many cases a solid bathing schedule in winter. Lice were practically family members. They lived in the seams of clothing and made surprise visits during dinner, sleep, and awkward conversations. Fleas, too. You scratch your forearm, then your neck, then your scalp. You try to stop. Scratching in public here is about as taboo as breathing. Everyone does it, but no one wants to be seen doing it. It's like social grooming minus the monkeys. Scholars still debate how seriously Vikings took personal space, but based on tonight's evidence, the answer is not very. You're now cheek to cheek, literally, with a total stranger whose nighttime breathing rhythm syncs with yours in a way that's almost romantic if it weren't so claustrophobic. And yet, weirdly, it works. This closeness, this hive of humanity crammed into a log and mud structure in the dead of winter. It has a rhythm, a warmth, like a family reunion where everyone forgot deodorant but brought soup. You start to feel your body relax. The cold is still there, yes, and the snoring, and the smell, and the creeping suspicion that something small with legs is nesting in your hair. But your eyes start to close anyway. Your breath slows. Your body, exhausted from the sheer effort of not dying, finally surrenders. You're almost asleep when something scuttles across your chest. Fast, tiny, gone before you can react. You bolt upright, smacking your head on a hanging piece of cured meat. It swings like a pendulum of shame. No one else reacts. You're the only one wide-eyed and startled. You lie back down. You tell yourself it was nothing. Just a trick of the light, or a breeze, or a mouse, a very respectful mouse. Somewhere in the dark a dog growls low, then settles. You close your eyes again. You think, I'll adjust, eventually. You don't sleep. Not really. You drift in and out of a half-dreaming state where time crawls and your limbs alternately freeze, itch, and tingle with pins and needles. One moment, your hip bone is digging into the timber bench. The next, someone has flung an elbow across your face. You open one eye to find a sheep staring back at you, chewing very slowly like it's judging your life choices. Somewhere around what you think is the middle of the night, though without a clock or even the moon for reference, it could just as easily be 3 p.m. People begin to shift more deliberately. One person sits up, rubs their eyes, and begins feeding the fire. A few others start to stir, grumbling softly, their breath visible in the chilly air. The smell of smoke thickens again. You sit up too, bleary-eyed, and wondering if this counts as morning or just less night. And then the animals start. You forgot about the animals, didn't you? Oh no, not the one sheep who snored next to your left ear all night. We're talking the real crowd. The cows, the pigs, the chickens, the actual living, breathing, pooping livestock that live inside the longhouse with you. Welcome to the Viking concept of heating efficiency. If you're going to generate body heat, why not add a few cows to the mix? Historians still argue whether this was a universal Viking practice or something more common among rural or poorer families, but there's no debate about this. Livestock and humans shared indoor space, and that space was limited. So yes, that gentle huffing sound you heard during the night wasn't a dream. It was a cow exhaling onto your back. You turn and, yep, there it is. A large, shaggy brown cow blinking slowly at you with the infinite patience of a creature that has seen generations come and go. It smells exactly like you'd expect. Strong, earthy, a little judgmental. You shuffle sideways to create space, but your rear end hits someone's knee. You're boxed in. The floor is slick in places. You don't want to know why. You try not to step in anything identifiable. Your boots squish. That's enough information. There's no drainage here, just a dirt floor absorbing everything life throws at it. From spilled stew to baby spit up to cow manure. You think longingly of your bathroom back home, the ceramic, the tile, the scent of pine-scented cleaner. Here? The bathroom is a communal bucket near the far end of the longhouse. No walls, no seat, just a sloshing wooden pail, and the vague hope that no one walks by while you're using it. You are deeply, almost spiritually, not ready for that kind of vulnerability. So you hold it. For now. Quirky fact time. In some longhouses, chickens would roost in the rafters. Yes, above you. Gravity, of course, remains undefeated. So when a chicken shifts in its sleep or flaps its wings in excitement, you don't just wake up. You flinch. You pray. You possibly curse a Norse god under your breath. You hear a shuffle above and look up just in time to see a small white shape leap off the beam and flutter down. It misses your head by inches. The chicken hits the ground, struts away like nothing happened, and leaves behind a small steaming souvenir. You shift your sleeping spot 2 feet to the left. Someone starts milking one of the cows right there in the corner. The squelching sound is shockingly loud. A toddler watches with interest while gnawing on what might be a leather strap or a very old carrot. You can't be sure. The child is adorable in a slightly feral way. The longhouse is fully awake now. People are moving, talking in low voices, stretching, scratching. Breakfast is being prepared over the fire again. More stew, likely recycled from last night. Maybe thickened with a new root vegetable. Maybe not. You're handed a bowl again. You eat. It's warm. It doesn't taste worse than yesterday. That counts as a win. And then someone tries to involve you in the morning chores. A gruff-looking man points to an axe and then to a stack of logs near the door. You blink at him. He gestures again. His expression makes it clear this is not a request. You pick up the axe. It's heavy, splintered. The handle is worn smooth by decades of calloused hands. Yours, unfortunately, are still soft. You swing. The blade thunks into the wood like a disapproving sigh. It doesn't split. It just sticks. You tug. It doesn't move. The man watches, unimpressed. He takes the axe from you, swings once, and the log cleaves in two like it owed him money. You hand it back. He grunts something that probably translates to amateur, and moves on. Historians believe chores were an all-hands-on-deck situation in Viking households. Children worked. Elders contributed what they could. Guests? They didn't get to lounge. You're already on thin ice for sleeping in Grandpa's spot. Now you've proven you can't even split firewood. Morale is low. You wander to the other side of the longhouse, hoping to escape further duties. You find a teenage girl grinding grain with a stone quern. It's slow, repetitive work. She looks up and offers a faint smile. You smile back and consider offering to help, but after the axe incident, maybe not. You sit nearby and try to look useful. She starts humming and you realise it's the same melody from the night before, that ancient mournful lullaby. It drifts through the smoke and mingles with the scent of firewood and wet fur. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sound carry you. For a fleeting second it's peaceful, and then something headbutts your thigh. You open your eyes. It's a goat. An extremely determined goat with one milky eye and no sense of personal space. It bleats, hard. You yelp. The girl laughs so hard she snorts. You sigh and give the goat a pat. It tries to eat your sleeve. So to recap, you've slept poorly, nearly frozen and or suffocated, stepped in something questionable, failed at wood cutting, and been assaulted by livestock, and the day's just beginning. You're halfway through your second bowl of mystery stew, now chunkier and somehow spicier, which is both suspicious and exciting, when you hear a strange slapping noise behind you. You turn around slowly. A pig is waddling through the centre of the longhouse, hooves clicking on the packed dirt, tail bouncing like it has opinions. It snorts loudly, then plops down right next to the fire like it pays rent here. No one seems surprised. The pig is clearly irregular. You, however, are still adjusting to the fact that you now share your personal space with half a petting zoo. Welcome to the full Viking winter indoor experience, where the people and animals live under one roof not by accident, but by practical design. This is how they survived. Not just the people, but the animals too. Chickens in the rafters, goats along the walls, a pair of cows in the rear stall, and at least one very flatulent pig occupying the warmest spot near the hearth. Historians still debate just how close humans and livestock coexisted during the long winters. Was it every household, just poorer farms, or perhaps a seasonal arrangement? Either way, in this longhouse, you're clearly on equal footing with the livestock. Literally, because you're stepping in what they leave behind. You begin to move more cautiously. Every patch of straw becomes a game of what's under this. You develop a sixth sense for dodging droppings, hooves, and the occasional low-hanging chicken. The place is alive in a way that feels chaotic, but strangely functional. It's a barn, a dorm, and a family reunion rolled into one steaming, smoky chamber. You try to make yourself useful again. Someone motions for you to help sweep the floor. You take the broom, which is more twig bundle than tool, and begin pushing things around. Dust, ash, a pebble, something unidentifiable that squeaks and scurries under a bench. You decide not to pursue it. A child nearby is chasing a chicken. The chicken is winning. You can't help but smile, despite the ambient odour and the suspicious smear on your sleeve that you're choosing to ignore. The child trips, giggles, and is scooped up by an older woman who kisses their filthy cheek like it's made of gold. Life goes on here. Loud, dirty, close, but filled with an odd rhythm that seems to make sense once you stop resisting it. Quirky tidbit. Viking children often had small animal companions like baby goats or dogs that would literally sleep in their beds with them. Not just for affection, but for heat. A furball friend was as good as another blanket. You look down. A small dog with mismatched eyes is curled up against your leg. It's warm. It smells like fish. You accept the friendship. Outside, the wind howls against the longhouse walls. You can hear snow hitting the thatched roof in little flurries, tapping like fingers. There's no desire to go outside. In fact, the very idea of outside feels theoretical now. A story you once heard about a mythical land where air is clean and boots don't squelch. Someone opens the main door, just a crack. The wind screams in like an angry ghost. Everyone flinches. A man quickly ducks inside, shakes off the snow, and slams the door shut behind him. The entire room settles again, like a shaken snow globe returning to calm. The newcomer is carrying a bundle wrapped in fur. He sets it down. Inside, fresh meat, likely from a recently hunted animal. People gather around with interest. The matriarch examines it with a practiced eye, nods, approves. You try to stay back lest you be asked to help skin something. Your stomach is still on shaky terms with last night's stew. Here's a mainstream historical fact to chew on while you breathe through your mouth. These longhouses often served as combined homes, storage spaces, workshops, and animal shelters, especially during the long, brutal winters when survival depended on keeping everything and everyone close. There was no division between living area and barn, just different corners, slightly different smells. You start to notice the small things. A carving in one of the beams shaped like a bear. A bundle of herbs hanging near the fire, maybe to flavour stew, maybe to ward off sickness. A comb tucked into a post carved from antler. These people lived with their things, in their things. Nothing was decorative without being useful. Everything served a purpose, even if that purpose was simply to remind them of something warmer. You try to sit again, this time near the back wall, where it's quieter and slightly less pungent. A teenage boy is using a bone needle to repair a tear in his sleeve. He doesn't look up, but he shifts slightly so you can sit beside him. This, you realise, is the closest thing to a compliment you've received all day. He speaks, slowly. A few words. You don't understand, but he gestures toward your shoes, then laughs. You look down. Your high-tech waterproof boots are caked in mud and animal excrement. One lace is chewed. Probably the goat. You laugh too, mostly to avoid crying. He says another word, points to his own fur-lined boots, then to yours. He makes a gesture, exaggerated walking, slipping, falling. The universal sign for your shoes are garbage here. You nod. He grins. Communication is rough, but it's happening. You're not completely alone. You just exist slightly out of sync, like a wrong note in an otherwise smooth melody. You hear shouting near the front again. Another argument, or maybe just a loud discussion. Voices rise, hands gesture, but no one seems alarmed. You wonder what they're talking about. Politics, religion. Whose turn it is to clean the bucket? Hard to say. Historians still argue whether Norse households were as democratic in daily life as their thing meeting suggested. Were decisions made as a group? Or did the head of the household run things with absolute authority? From what you can see tonight, it's a mix. Loud opinions fly freely, but there's a definite unspoken hierarchy, and you are very clearly at the bottom of it. A horn is passed around, curved, polished, filled with some kind of drink. You take a cautious sip when it reaches you. It's strong, sour, warming, like fermented apples and old socks. You nod politely and pass it on. It helps, just a little. The light is dimming again. Not that it was bright to begin with. But now the fire is being fed less often. People are curling up under blankets and furs. The animals settle into their spots with practiced indifference. You're trying to find a new sleeping place. Ideally one not next to the pig. You spot a spot. It looks promising. Then you hear a wet squish as someone sits there first. You've surrendered to the reality of communal sleeping again. This time wedged between a barrel of dried fish and a boy who mumbles old Norse phrases in his sleep. You don't need to understand the language to know he's probably dreaming about axes, frost and punching things. But as you settle in, an uncomfortable sensation creeps up your back. Not just cold, not just the ever-present scent of aged mutton and wet fur. No, this is something crawling. You freeze, scratch. There it is again. You sit up and slap at your tunic, praying to Odin, Thor, Loki and whatever other Norse deity takes pity on unwashed time travellers. You're not alone. Around the room, you notice subtle movements. People scratching their necks, rubbing at their sleeves, shaking out their blankets like they're trying to cast off bad dreams. Congratulations, you've officially joined the Viking flea circus. It's not your imagination. Quirky historical tidbit. Viking combs, often made from bone or antler, were essential personal items, not just for styling impressive beards, but for removing lice. Archaeologists have uncovered hundreds of these, many with nicks and grooves from frequent use. They weren't ornamental, they were weapons of hygiene. Historians still argue whether Norse hygiene habits were better or worse than their European contemporaries. On one hand, they bathed more often, weekly in some cases. On the other, they lived in closed spaces with animals, rarely changed clothes in winter, and fleas were more common than spoons. And you? You've made yourself a full-course buffet. Your modern skin, soft and showered, is a VIP feast. You try not to panic. It's night time again. The longhouse is darker than ever. Shadows blur against the walls. A few people are awake, but most have slipped into sleep already, curled into pelts, huddled around the slowly dimming fire. You lie back down and try to ignore the itch crawling across your shoulder blades. You tell yourself it's just your imagination, that you're being dramatic. And then something actually moves across your ribs. You yelp, quietly, like someone trying not to be noticed during a horror movie. You scramble upright and start subtly slapping at your clothes, only to realise the entire process of removing layers will be a nightmare. You're wearing wool on wool, possibly lined with more wool. It's itchy, it's hot, it smells like yesterday's stew. And now it's mobile. A soft cough behind you interrupts your panic. An older woman is awake. She watches you calmly, then reaches over to hand you something. A small carved comb. You blink, she gestures. Use it. You take it with gratitude that feels a little too intense for what is essentially a flea filter. You lift your sleeve, run the comb along your arm, and sure enough, a tiny black speck flips out into the firelight. You gag internally. The woman nods, satisfied, and lies back down. Welcome to the family. You spend the next several minutes, maybe an hour, methodically scratching and combing and trying not to think about the fact that you're likely giving some ancestral parasite a first-class tour of your bloodstream. Eventually the activity settles you down. You lie back, feeling oddly accomplished. The fire crackles softly, and the air thickens again with heat and smoke. You wrap yourself tighter in your pelt and close your eyes, and then you feel something soft and warm curl against your back. You tense. It's not another person, it's a dog, or maybe a puppy. Either way, it's decided that you are now its preferred nighttime pillow. It huffs a warm sigh into your neck and promptly falls asleep. You want to protest, to reclaim your bodily autonomy. But it's warm, and it doesn't smell that bad. And frankly, after the flea drama, you could use the emotional support. You sleep, sort of, lightly, like a soldier on watch. Every rustle feels like another invasion. Every tickle makes you flinch, but you rest more than you expected. In the grey stretch before dawn, if dawn is even a thing anymore, you wake again. You can tell it's early because the snoring has stopped, but no one's talking yet. It's just the quiet shuffle of feet and the occasional grunt. The dog is still with you. A living hot water bottle. You pet it once and feel genuinely grateful. You sit up, scratch your neck automatically because, let's face it, they're never all gone, and stretch. Every joint pops. Your spine sounds like someone playing a xylophone. You look around, bleary-eyed. The same woman who handed you the comb is now sprinkling ashes over the fire to bank it. Clever. A way to keep coal smouldering until the next lighting, and a tip you'll file away under useful when society collapses. You stand. The pig is already awake and rooting through a sack of turnips like it owns the place. The cow shifts its weight and moos softly, sounding remarkably like you feel. Tired, cold, and vaguely itchy. You make your way to the side of the longhouse, where your boots, muddy, chewed and stiff, are waiting. You shove your feet in, wincing at the sensation of straw and probably at least one unwelcome beetle. And then, with heroic reluctance, you decide to step outside. You unlatch the heavy wooden door. It groans open. A blast of winter air slaps you in the face like an insult. Your lungs seize. Your skin contracts. Your eyes water. But it's the cleanest air you've breathed in 2 days. Crisp, brutal, honest. Snow blankets, everything in white silence. The skies are washed out grey. The trees are bare and menacing. You take a step forward, and your boot sinks ankle deep into frozen slush. A raven watches from the roof beam, head cocked. You nod at it like, yes, I know. I've become part of this now. You relieve yourself behind a shrub, squinting against the wind and trying to keep your balance. Privacy is a relative term. When you return, you're greeted by the sound of someone retching into the communal bucket, and a baby shrieking in what might be Norse baby for life is hard. You pass the pig again. It ignores you. You nod in mutual respect. Inside it's warmer. It smells like people and smoke and stew and, yes, definitely animals. But it's familiar now. Your senses have adjusted. Your standards have plummeted. You've scratched, sweated, nibbled questionable meat, and bonded with a dog that probably has fleas. You're not thriving, but you're still here. You're beginning to accept it now. The air in the longhouse is never just air. It's an aromatic soup of humanity. Livestock, damp wool, wood smoke, old fish, and that faint tang of unwashed feet. If someone bottled it, they'd call it Eau de Viking, suffer for authenticity. And you'd buy it once, spray it once, and cry. You sit by the fire again, trying to warm your hands. The coals smoulder but don't blaze. Wood is precious. The firekeeper adds fuel carefully, like he's feeding a pet dragon that might get cranky. Your fingers tingle with returning sensation. That's the nice way of saying it feels like you're being stabbed by 1,000 invisible icicles. Someone offers you a bowl of morning broth. It's thinner than last night's stew, more like warm water that flirted briefly with a turnip. You accept it. Your expectations have plummeted, but your gratitude has soared. It's warm. It's something. You sip, and that's when it hits you again. The air. This time, not the smell, but the thickness. It's dense. You're breathing smoke, livestock funk, and 25 people's morning breath. Your lungs feel like you're trying to inhale soup. You move closer to the wall, looking for a clean draft, but all you find is a cold breeze that smells faintly of wet goat. You pull your scarf up over your nose. It helps, a little. Here's your mainstream historical fact for the night. Viking longhouses, especially in winter, had no chimneys. The smoke from the central hearth would just hang out inside, slowly drifting upward through small vents in the thatched roof, or more often, just filling the space and escaping at its leisure. Historians still argue whether this was an intentional feature to help preserve meat and deter insects, or just a consequence of architectural limitations. Either way, the result is the same. You are breathing slow-cooked air, and it's making you lightheaded. You blink, trying to focus. Shapes blur around you. People moving, cows shifting, someone sharpening a blade with rhythmic precision that, frankly, feels a little threatening in such close quarters. Your eyes water. You cough. Someone claps you on the back hard enough to jolt your soul forward 5 years. You give a thumbs up and try to act like your lungs aren't in open rebellion. Fun fringe tidbit. Some Norse communities burned peat instead of wood. Peat, compressed layers of decayed plant material, produces a heavy, oily smoke that clings to everything, including your clothes, your hair, your soul. It's excellent for preservation. Meat, hides, lungs, you name it. You take another sip of broth. Cough again. And then, as if your body has finally reached its limit, you sneeze. Loud. A huge, uncontrollable explosion of sound. Everything stops for half a second. A dozen heads turn. Someone raises an eyebrow. You try to wave it off like it's nothing, but the toddler next to you immediately imitates the sneeze, then giggles. The moment passes. You sniff. Your nose is running. Again. You wipe it on your sleeve. Again. You're becoming one of them. You're not sure whether to be proud or horrified. The fire pops, and a spark flies up and lands in your bowl. You fish it out casually and keep drinking. No one notices. No one would care if they did. You catch a reflection in a polished bronze dish propped on the wall. It takes you a moment to recognize yourself. Your face is smudged. Your eyes are puffy. Your hair has given up entirely. You look like someone who fell into a medieval thrift store and then wrestled a goat. And lost. You step outside again, needing a break from the air that's actively trying to marinate you, but it's still snowing. Of course it is. You take a few steps out into the white. The cold slaps your face like it missed you. You breathe deep, and it burns. Cold, clean, honest. Your lungs rejoice. Your brain starts to clear. Then your feet remind you that you're wearing boots soaked in mystery slush. And now your toes are wet and frozen. But still, fresh air. You linger, despite the cold, watching the snow drift down in fat flakes. You can barely hear the longhouse now. Just the wind and the occasional creak of a tree nearby threatening to fall. You remember how quiet life can be without engines, phones, or humming appliances. Just your breath, the snow, the distant caw of a raven that somehow always sounds sarcastic. Then you hear a shout from inside. You sigh and head back. Inside, the heat punches you in the face again. You're instantly damp. The sweat starts behind your knees. The smoke resumes its loving embrace of your lungs. You sit back down near the fire where someone has just started boiling water for tea. Yes, tea, made with pine needles and a few dried berries. Tastes like Christmas and desperation, but it's warm, and that's enough. The smoke coils upward like a snake with nowhere to go. You squint through it, eyes stinging. You realise now why everyone here has that same slightly haunted expression. It's not war stories, it's indoor air quality. You imagine someone trying to explain the concept of carbon monoxide poisoning to a Viking and being told to man up. One of the elders lights a small oil lamp. It adds almost no light, but a great deal of extra warmth and smell. The oil is animal fat. The wick is a twist of linen. It sputters gently. Someone hums a slow, old melody near the back of the room, and a few others join in. It's weirdly beautiful, even through the haze. And still, this air, it presses on you. It hugs you with sweat and soot and 10,000 microscopic bits of everything. It's like wearing an extra person. A smoky, sticky, smothering person. You're trying to stay calm, trying to breathe in shallow sips like someone inhaling near a dumpster fire, when something brushes your ear. You yelp, quietly, and look up. A chicken, on the rafter above you, flapping its wings in a burst of drama. You scoot left, fast, just in time to avoid a gift from above. The person next to you chuckles and hands you a rag. You take it. You don't ask what it's been used for, you just nod and clean the spot, then sit back down and accept your fate. It's getting dark again. Or maybe it never stopped being dark. Your eyes sting, your nose burns, but you're still breathing. Barely. The urge to bathe hits you like a sudden memory of your past life. Clean towels, steam rising from a hot shower, that little ah noise you'd make as warm water hit your neck. It feels like a dream, a ridiculous, luxurious modern dream. Because here you're not just dirty, you're layered. Smoke clings to your hair. Grease from the stew has settled into your sleeves. There's a faint stickiness behind your knees that you really don't want to investigate. And your face feels like it's been basted in firewood and goat. The worst part is that everyone else looks fine. Not clean, exactly, but acclimated. Like the grime is part of their skin now. They don't itch. They don't sniff themselves suspiciously. They certainly don't mutter softly, "I used to use eucalyptus body wash." And then you hear it. That magical, hopeful word. Stouffer. Someone whispers it near the fire. You perk up. You remember your research. That's a bathhouse. Or more accurately, a sweat lodge. The Norse version of self-care. You lean in a little, trying not to be obvious, but your eyes have already lit up like someone just said spa day. Historically, Vikings did bathe, more often than many of their European neighbours in fact. Weekly, if the weather and water cooperated. They built small outbuildings filled with steam, heated stones, and hot water poured over bundles of herbs. Think of it as a cross between a sauna and a group therapy session, minus the robes and plus a high chance of fainting from smoke inhalation. Historians still argue whether these bathing sessions were social, spiritual, or simply practical. Probably all three, but to your modern ears it sounds like salvation. Unfortunately, today is not bath day. Your heart breaks a little when you realise they're only talking about the bathhouse. Reminiscing. Planning for next week. Next week. You sag visibly. One of the women pats your shoulder like she understands. She doesn't, but she sees the 1,000-yard stare of someone spiritually wounded by the idea of 8 more unwashed days. Instead, someone hands you a cloth, dry, coarse, folded neatly. You look at it, confused. "Wash," she says, pointing to a wooden basin in the corner. "Oh, not a bath. A rag wipe down." You nod solemnly. "This will have to do." You trudge to the basin. It's filled with tepid water that may have been hot sometime before the last harvest. There's a wooden ladle floating in it, and the faint suggestion of herbs. Something minty, maybe, or mouldy. You splash your face. You gasp. It's freezing. You try to clean off as much of yourself as possible without undressing fully, because let's be real, nobody here wants to see you flail around in your long johns like a caffeinated ferret. You scrub your face, your neck, your armpits gently. You splash again. The water turns murky within seconds. You glance around. No one's watching, but the pig snorts judgmentally behind you. The cloth does more smearing than cleaning, but it feels productive. Your cheeks sting. Your hands look like you just punched a chimney, but when you sit back down, someone nods at you approvingly. Progress. Quirky fringe fact. Viking warriors would sometimes rub themselves with animal fat during winter. Not for hygiene, but as an extra layer of insulation. Imagine feeling cold and thinking, you know what would fix this? Bacon grease. You look around and realise that might actually explain the shine on one man's forearms. You also realise that you, without lotion, soap or a real towel, are slowly becoming a human parchment. You scratch your scalp again, suspicious of a new tenant. Someone hands you a comb. Different one. This one's been heated by the fire. You pause. Is this a trap? Apparently not. It's a lice check. You submit to it like a dog at a vet appointment. The woman gently combs your hair, watching intently. It's oddly soothing, until she flicks something into the fire and makes a low noise of approval. You die inside a little, and still. No one's disgusted. It's just part of life. Fleas and lice and dirt and sweat. A body isn't expected to be spotless. It's expected to endure. It's a tool, not a temple. You feel strange envy for how unbothered they are, and also a desperate need for hand sanitizer. You sit back and take a long, slow breath. Regret, smoke, Always the smoke. Someone tosses dried herbs onto the hearth. The room fills with a sharp, nose-clearing scent. Juniper, maybe. It cuts through the sweat and the stink for a moment, like a tiny miracle. You let your eyes close, and then someone lets out a sharp yelp. Not fear, not pain, irritation. You look over. A boy holds up a rat by the tail, grumbling. The rat wiggles indignantly like it had an appointment it's late for. The boy opens the door, tosses it into the snow and slams it shut again. Done. No fuss. The Longhouse chuckles. You blink. Rats, fleas, smoke, cold. This isn't some catastrophe. It's just daily maintenance. The woman next to you reaches for your hands and shows you how to scrape dirt from under your nails with a flat bone. It works. Kinda. She shrugs like, that'll do. And you realise something. Clean doesn't mean polished here, it means functional. Are your fingernails spotless? Number? Can you now hold a bowl without accidental seasoning? Yes. Victory? Your throat is dry. You ask for water. You're handed a wooden scoop dipped in a bucket by the door. You hesitate. It's cloudy. It's room temperature, which in this house means barely above freezing. You take a sip. You survive. Historians have suggested that water quality varied wildly in the Viking Age. Some households used snowmelt. Others pulled straight from nearby streams. And then there was the magical moment when mead was deemed safer than water. You ask softly, mead? They nod. Someone smiles and pours you a little from a horn. You sip. It's sharp, sweet, a little sour. But it doesn't taste like feet, so it's the best thing you've had in days. As night creeps in again, and the smoke curls upward, and someone starts humming that same low tune, you feel a little less like a tourist and more like a carbon-stained honorary member of this wheezing, wooden ship of survival. You still stink, you still itch, but you're less gross than this morning, and around here that's basically a spa day. The stew is back, or maybe it never left. You're pretty sure it's the same pot, perpetually simmering, like a cauldron of eternal meaty mystery. It smells stronger now, saltier, fishier, maybe even a bit vinegary. You squint into your wooden bowl and see something that might be a fish head, or possibly just a very unfortunate root vegetable. You take a bite anyway. It's warm, it's chewy, it's aggressively functional. Tonight's dinner includes sour bread as well, dense, dark, and studded with what you pray are seeds. It's the kind of loaf that could double as a blunt weapon. You chew thoughtfully, jaw working like you're grinding gravel, and try not to let your expression betray the emotional journey your taste buds are on. Welcome to the Viking winter menu. Mainstream historical fact. Vikings didn't have the luxury of variety during the cold months. Preserved meats, smoked fish, sour rye bread, and fermented vegetables were staples. If it wasn't pickled, dried, or salted to high heaven, it probably didn't survive until February. And spices. Unless your chieftain was swimming in silver from raiding trips, you're not getting any. Salt is king, vinegar is its moody cousin. You ask what kind of meat this is. They say a word that could mean goat, sheep, or don't ask. You nod politely and take another bite. And here's a fun little fringe fact to chew on with your pickled turnip. Vikings sometimes made a jelly out of boiled fish skin and bones, a kind of gelatinous slab they could slice and eat cold. Rich in collagen, probably great for your joints, terrible for your morale. You glance around and realise everyone else is eating without hesitation. Kids are chewing strips of dried meat like it's candy. An old man pulls out a lump of smoked blubber and pops it in his mouth like it's a marshmallow. You're still working on the fish head mystery stew and wondering whether the crunch was a bone or a beetle. A woman nearby plucks a little dried herb from a pouch and tosses it in her bowl. She notices you watching and smiles. She offers a pinch. You take it, sprinkle it in, and for a glorious moment it's not awful. It's still chewy and confusing, but there's flavour, something earthy. You nod in deep gratitude. This is your culinary high point. And then, because the universe enjoys comedy, someone sets a bowl of fermented shark in front of you. It's called hakal, and it's a dish so potent that modern-day Icelanders still describe it with a wince. The smell hits you before the taste. It's ammonia forward. Think seafood meets public restroom. You stare at the quivering cubes. They stare back. Historians still argue whether this dish was widely eaten or reserved for desperate times. Some say it was a delicacy for special occasions. Others believe it was simply what you did when you found a dead shark and had way too much time on your hands. Either way, it's here, and they're watching you. You pick up a piece, it's rubbery. You lift it to your mouth, you chew and chew and chew. It doesn't break down so much as surrender slowly. The flavour floods your senses like a flood of angry ghosts from the bottom of the ocean. Everyone watches. You smile. You nod. You make a soft noise that might be interpreted as approval. Then you immediately take a huge sip of mead and pray for amnesia. Your host claps you on the back. Hard. It's a rite of passage. You did it. You might not have liked it, but you survived it. Dinner continues. Someone brings out a wheel of sour cheese. It's the consistency of a tyre and smells like it's been aged under someone's armpit. But next to the fermented shark, it tastes like a fine dessert. You've started rating food by survivability rather than flavour. No one's rushing through the meal. This is a slow communal affair. People sit together, chew methodically, swap bites, offer chunks of bread like currency. Children dart between legs with sticky fingers. One of them wipes their hands on your pants. You accept this now. You're part of the furniture. Nearby, a few of the younger men are sharpening knives. Not in a threatening way, just casually, like one might spin a pen or crack their knuckles. You notice the knives are bone-handled, some inlaid with little carvings. The blades shine in the firelight, freshly oiled. You think about how important those knives are here, not just for eating or hunting, but for carving, building, mending, defending. Each one is deeply personal, passed down or made by hand. You don't have anything like that back home. Maybe a favourite spatula. You chew another bite of sour bread and try not to think too hard about your life choices. And yet, amidst the fish jelly and armpit cheese, something shifts. You're not just tolerating it anymore. You're adapting. Slowly. You're learning when to sip and when to chew. Which chunks to trust. How to mask the worst flavours with a gulp of mead. You catch yourself reaching for more bread. You catch yourself enjoying the warmth of it all. Sure, your palate's been emotionally scarred, and your digestive system might sue you in the morning, but your belly is full, your fingers are warm, and no one's trying to kill you. That's a Viking winter win. The fire crackles. Someone tells a story, gesturing dramatically. Laughter bubbles up. You don't catch every word, but the rhythm carries you. You can feel the tale in the rise and fall of his voice, the highs, the lows, the roar of a battle, the silence of snowfall, the final twist that makes the room chuckle. And you, fish-breathed, cheese-smudged and probably slightly pickled, you laugh too. A child offers you a piece of dried apple. It's leathery and sour, but sweet underneath. You chew it slowly, savouring that brief burst of something you actually recognise. The bowl is empty now, the bread is gone, the shark is blessedly out of sight. The pig snores near the door. You scratch your arm again. No one blinks. And in the flickering warmth, with your breath mingling with smoke, you realise you might be filthy. You might be itchy. But you're not hungry anymore. And somehow that feels like peace. The stew has settled in your gut like a sleeping bear. You're full, sort of. More accurately, you're occupied. Your stomach's working overtime to interpret what you just fed it. Like it's reading a text in a forgotten language and deeply confused. You lean back against the timber wall, content to sit quietly and digest, when someone turns to you and starts talking. Fast, in Old Norse, with passion. You freeze. You nod politely. They continue. Faster now. Gesturing with their bowl, occasionally looking around as if drawing you into a deeply layered joke or perhaps a spirited debate about mead fermentation. You laugh. Why not? It seems like the right emotional tone. They pause, wait for your response. Uh-oh. You point at your chest. English. They frown slightly. English, they repeat, testing the word like it's a strange new vegetable. You nod. Yes. English. They blink, then try again, slower this time, switching to a few words that sound vaguely Anglo-Saxon. Something about ale, cold, and your face. You think it might be a compliment, or a weather report. This is where it hits you. You don't speak Viking, and no, pointing and smiling doesn't get you far when the language is a blend of Proto-Germanic runes and aggressive vowels. Even modern Icelandic, its closest descendant, is basically Viking on hard mode. Historians still argue whether Norse speakers could understand their Anglo-Saxon or Old English neighbours during the Danelaw period. Some think they got by with a pidgin mix of gestures and guesswork. Others believe the overlap was surprisingly fluid. But here, in this house, in this century, you're back at square one. No subtitles, no Google Translate. Just you and a room full of people who think you might have just proposed to someone's grandmother. You try again. Point to yourself. Patrick, or whatever alias you're going by in Viking times. They repeat it. Patrick? Close enough. You point to them. They grin. Erica. You smile. Erica. He slaps your back hard enough to rearrange your ribs. It's progress. But the language barrier doesn't go away. It hovers like smoke, clinging to every conversation you're not a part of. Around the hearth, people chatter, laugh, argue. You can't catch the rhythm. You catch fragments, names, numbers, maybe an insult. But it's like trying to sing along with a song you've only heard underwater. Someone tosses a joke across the fire. The room erupts with laughter. You laugh too. Delayed, uncertain, hoping the punchline wasn't, "Watch the outsider fake a laugh." You feel like a ghost at a dinner party, present but not fully there. You retreat to a quieter corner. A boy is whittling something with a little bone knife. He doesn't speak to you, just keeps shaving curls from a hunk of wood that might become a spoon or a goddess or a terrifying doll. You sit beside him. No words, just shared silence and soft carving sounds. It helps. The lack of pressure, no need to decode or explain, just exist. Then someone drops into the seat beside you. Erica again, still smiling, still talking. He draws in the ash on the floor, a stick figure with a round shield, a sword. He points to you, then to the figure, then to himself, then he draws another figure. Antlers for a helmet, big axe, larger, scowling. Clearly a bad guy. You get it. He's telling a story, a battle, maybe real, maybe heroic fantasy. He makes sound effects, clashing, shouting, a dramatic ugh for a final blow. You nod along, completely caught up in his performance, even if you don't understand every word. This question mark, this is the universal part. Stories, faces, firelight. You recognise the tone, the arc, the rhythm of drama even when the language is a mystery. You nod at the right times, you gasp when he gasps. When he pantomimes victory, arms raised, you clap, and others join in, chuckling at your enthusiasm. It's a small victory, no words but a shared moment. Then, of course, you say the wrong thing. You try a phrase you think you picked up earlier, something cheerful, something like "well done." You say it proudly. Erica blinks. A few people look up, someone snorts, someone else laughs. Erica grins and repeats what you said, slowly, deliberately. Then mimes, something rude. You turn red. So that's what you said. You've just told a room full of Vikings something along the lines of "your goat smells romantic." You raise your hands in surrender. Sorry. They laugh louder. A good laugh. You're the punchline, but it's friendly. Mostly. Here's a quirky historical tidbit. Old Norse had dozens of words for insult and mockery. The sagas are full of poetic, layered burns. Calling someone a coward wasn't enough. You had to elaborate. You had to get creative. Viking culture had a rich tradition of flighting, insult contests where wit was a weapon, and the stakes could range from bruised egos to actual duels. And you just entered that arena with the vocabulary of a potato. Still, there's mercy. Erica gives you a half hug and says something that might mean you tried. Then he hands you a piece of dried meat and leaves you alone to recover your pride. You chew it slowly. It tastes like forgiveness. You spend the next hour listening harder, watching lips, gestures, context. You begin to spot patterns. You learn the tone of a joke, the cadence of disagreement. You start to mimic how they nod, how they shrug, how they roll their eyes when the pig farts loudly during someone's speech. You may not have the words, but you're learning the feel. Night deepens, the fire burns low, people curl up again in their chosen nests, some beside family, some under furs, one or two literally pressed against cows. A dog settles against your hip without asking. You're too tired to be annoyed. As the room darkens, a man begins to sing. Low, slow, melodic. It's not a lullaby, not exactly. But it quiets the room. A few join in on the chorus. Even the chickens stop muttering. You lie down, listening to a language you don't understand but are starting to belong to, in a weird, itchy, smoky kind of way. And right before you drift off, Erica whispers something across the dark. You don't understand it, but this time you don't need to. You wake to someone yelling. Not angry yelling, ritual yelling. It's coming from the far end of the longhouse near the fire where a few people have gathered in a loose semicircle. One man stands with arms raised, chanting in a deep, rhythmic tone. Another sprinkles something into the fire, herbs maybe, or dried roots. The flames hiss and twist. The smoke changes flavour, now laced with something sharp and slightly sweet. The air feels different, thicker, charged. You're awake now, fully. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the dog draped across your legs. No one seems surprised by the ceremony, which means it's not unusual. You rise an inch closer, trying to watch without inserting yourself, which of course is hard to do when you're the most confused person in the room. The gathered people are quiet, respectful. Some have their heads bowed, others are watching the flames, faces solemn. The chanting man, older, draped in a fur-lined cloak, moves his hands in slow circles. He's holding something, bones perhaps, or a carved talisman. He begins to speak. You catch a few words, names maybe, or gods. You recognise Odin and Freya. There's reverence in his voice, a kind of calm intensity, not angry, not fearful, but very much serious. You're in the middle of a ritual, mainstream historical fact. Norse religion wasn't centralised, no temples in every town. Instead, rituals were often performed at home or in outdoor sacred groves by chieftains, seers, or the oldest, most respected member of the household. Offerings could include food, animal bones, carved runes, or even a symbolic item of personal value. The gods weren't far away. They were here, woven into daily life like wool into a tunic. You've read about this kind of thing, sure. But it hits different when the air's thick with smoke, and you're watching someone thank Thor for safe livestock deliveries while holding a goat's skull. The man begins tossing small handfuls of barley into the fire. A woman beside him adds what looks like dried fish. Someone else sets a tiny carved figure into the ash. It's clearly a household rite, part gratitude, part insurance. Winter is hard. They're hoping the gods keep them fed, warm and untrampled by angry elk. You try not to draw attention, but you can feel eyes on you. Friendly eyes, curious, wondering what the outsider thinks of all this. So you do what any polite time traveller would do. You bow your head. Not deeply, not performatively, just enough to show you see it, that you're not laughing, that you're listening. A few nods ripple through the group. Then, because the gods have excellent comedic timing, someone behind you coughs loudly and knocks over a wooden bowl of fish bones into the fire. Sparks explode upward like fireworks. The chanting stops. Everyone freezes. And you, of course, are standing right in the middle of it. A beat of silence. You prepare for divine smiting. Then the old man grins. He says something sharp and amused. Everyone laughs. The ritual continues, a little looser now, a little warmer. Apparently the gods enjoy a good joke too. You relax, but it's a good reminder you're still walking a tightrope here. One wrong move, One misunderstood joke, and you might offend not just your hosts, but their ancestors, their gods, their entire cosmology. Historians still argue how seriously day-to-day Norse folk took religious etiquette. Was it rigid dogma or flexible tradition? Were the gods feared, loved, or just respected like volatile relatives? Probably all of the above. But one thing's clear, belief isn't separate from life. It is life. It's in the smoke, the stew, the carving on the doorframe. It's in the silence before a storm and the hum around the fire. A child toddles over to you holding a tiny wooden figurine, likely a god, or maybe just a warrior, but he hands it to you like it's a sacred relic. You accept it with both hands. He nods solemnly and wanders off. You sit down, turning the carving in your fingers. It's rough, but purposeful. A heavy jaw, a sword, a symbol on the chest you don't recognize. You glance toward the old man. He notices you, gestures for you to toss it gently into the fire. You hesitate, but you do. The flames crackle. No thunder, no lightning, just warmth. He smiles. You think you passed. Then someone nearby mutters something under their breath, low and hard, like a challenge. You don't catch it, but the room goes still again. The speaker points, not at you, but at a symbol carved into the beam overhead. They say a name. Others frown. One person spits. You've accidentally wandered into a religious disagreement. Lovely. Apparently not everyone agrees which god deserves thanks tonight. Or maybe someone made an offering to a deity the others don't like. Or maybe the fish bones were offensive. You honestly can't tell. The argument grows. Not a fight. Not yet. But tense. Heated. Voices rise. Hands gesture. The air feels less sacred now. More like Thanksgiving with thunder axes. You back away slowly. Religion in Viking culture wasn't a monolith. Families had their own customs, their own favoured gods. One household might swear by Odin, another by Thor, another might offer quietly to Loki and never admit it. And let's not even get started on the mysterious Vanir, those older, stranger gods that scholars still puzzle over. One woman makes a sharp remark and storms off to tend the stew. The mood shifts again. The ritual's over now. The sacred moment has passed, dissolved into the smoke. You sit near the fire watching the embers. Someone offers you a strip of dried fish. You accept it, chewing quietly. The old man, the one who led the ritual, sits beside you. He hands you a carved token. It's smooth, blackened at the edges, etched with a simple rune you don't recognize. You glance at him. He taps his chest, then yours, then the token, then the fire. You don't understand the words, but the message is clear. We all offer, we all endure. You nod. He smiles. You no longer have a grip on time. You blink, and it's dim. You blink again, and it's dimmer. Has it been hours? Days? There are no clocks, no sunlight, no chirping notifications from your phone to measure the minutes. Just chores, meal times, smoke, and endless murmurs from somewhere in the Longhouse. You ask someone cautiously what time it is. They look at you like you've just asked what shape the wind is. He points toward the fire, then toward the livestock pen, then upward, then shrugs. Helpful. Historians still argue about how Norse people measured time in the deepest dark of winter. Some suggest sunstones, a kind of primitive navigation crystal, were used to find the sun behind the clouds. Others say they went by routine, by task, by gut. You work until it's dark. You sleep until the house stirs. You rise when the cows do. Time isn't measured, it's felt. And you feel like you've lived 3 lives since dinner. There's a vague structure to the day, sure, chores, rest, meals, but it's not precise. You have no idea if it's midnight or mid-afternoon. Someone could tell you it's Thursday and you just nod like, yep, sure, I believe in Thursdays. You start marking time by heat. When the fire's high, it's mealtime. When it's low, it's rest. When someone swears loudly and drops a ladle into the ashes, it's probably still dinner. You also start tracking time by smell. Fresh bread. Late morning, dried fish. Evening, burnt wool. Someone sat too close to the hearth again. Goat smell? All the time. You try to make sense of the daily rhythm, but it's like trying to count waves in a fog. Everything blends. There's no lunch break. No o'clock just now and not now. You begin to see how someone could get completely absorbed into this kind of life. Not just physically, but mentally. You're untethered, drifting in a sea of smoke and chores and half-understood rituals. Someone hands you a wooden bowl. Again. Is it the third meal of the day? The first? A snack? Doesn't matter. You eat. It's warm and your stomach is still operating under the just be grateful policy. There's bread. The good kind. Chewy, sour, made with ground seeds and mystery flour. You eat it slowly, savouring the brief moment of comfort. The woman who gave it to you ruffles your hair like you're an especially large, confused child. You accept this now. You go to stretch your legs and realise you've been sitting in the same spot for hours. Your knees crack, your hips creak. You walk a slow circle of the longhouse, noting the familiar landmarks like a bored mall walker. Fish barrel, sleeping pig, angry chicken, bucket corner, guy with the suspicious mole, girl whittling something that might be a tiny axe. You sit near the back wall where a few bundles of supplies are stacked. Grain sacks, extra pelts, some ropes, and what might be a rolled-up fishing net. You lean back against them and sigh. They smell like damp wool and wood smoke, comforting in a strangely sour way. A young man sits nearby, humming. He's weaving something, cord maybe, using a simple spindle and a sharp rhythm. You watch, quietly. It's hypnotic. Time passes. You think. You scratch your arm. Again. You're not even embarrassed anymore. Everyone scratches. It's part of the rhythm too. You catch yourself nodding off, lulled by the fire, the weaving, the low murmur of distant voices, and then someone bursts in from outside, snow billowing behind them. Everyone looks up. The man is flushed, breathing hard, his beard rimmed with frost. He says something quickly. People stir, some stand. You have no idea what's happening. Someone points at the roof. Another grabs a pelt and tosses it to the side. You glance up and notice, a leak. Snowmelt, maybe. A slow drip right over one of the bedding areas. It's not a crisis. Just a small emergency in a long series of small emergencies that define daily life here. A couple of men grab a ladder, a rough handmade thing that looks like it only holds grudges, and climb up toward the rafters. You hear muffled scraping, thuds, and a few very expressive Norse swear words. Historians believe most longhouses required constant maintenance. With sod roofs, wooden beams, and a lot of weight from snow, winter often meant patch jobs and quick fixes. Leaks weren't an if, they were a when. You realise now there's no day off here, no Sabbath, no quiet Sunday with tea and laundry. If something breaks, you fix it. If something drips, you climb. Even in the middle of a meal, even if you were halfway through that glorious sour bread. The men come back down, shaking snow off their sleeves. One of them gives a thumbs up. The woman whose bedding nearly drowned shrugs, already rolling up the damp fur and hanging it by the fire. No drama, just another not now. You help gather the scattered supplies. No one asks you to, you just do. A small nod from one of the men confirms, you're getting the hang of this. The fire gets another log. People start settling again. You still don't know what time it is, and you don't need to. You're where you're supposed to be. Later, much later, you wake up again, unsure how long you've slept. Someone's walking the longhouse with a torch, checking for embers, watching for fire hazards. They stop beside the hearth and stir the ashes. Still warm. Good. The night is still dark. Or maybe morning. Or maybe it's just the in-between. You sit up, scratch your head, rub your face, and then sit in the quiet. You hear the wind outside, the snoring of the pig, the shuffle of someone getting up to check the bucket. It's all strangely comforting now, like background noise to a very strange, very long dream. You yawn. No one notices. Or maybe they do and they just don't care. You think about your old alarm clock, how it used to beep, how you used to curse it, smack it, beg for 5 more minutes. Here, there's no alarm, just the wind and the fire and the knowledge that, ready or not, tomorrow's chores are already on their way. The sound of chopping wakes you. Steady, rhythmic, thunk, thunk, thunk. You blink against the haze of morning smoke, eyes dry and half glued shut. Someone is already splitting logs just outside the longhouse door, and the sharp cracks echo through the walls like nature's own alarm clock. You sit up slowly. Your back protests. Your hips sound like they're grinding corn. You stretch, gently, and immediately regret it as a cramp flares in your calf. The dog at your feet lifts its head, groans, then goes back to sleep. Must be nice. You rub your eyes and consider your choices. Stay bundled up, cocooned in your now permanently smoky woolens, or rise and try to earn your keep before someone hands you a task you'll definitely fail at. You choose poorly, because before you even manage to stand, someone tosses you a wooden bucket and points toward the door. Their tone is chipper, far too chipper for a world without caffeine. Outside, water, fetch. You don't argue, you've learned better. The cold slaps your face the moment you open the door. The wind punches right through your clothes, whispering ancient curses against your exposed wrists. You trudge through the snow, bucket banging against your knee with each step. The sky's grey, the snow is falling sideways, and somewhere beneath your boots is the vague memory of solid ground. The water source isn't far, just a few minutes down the slope, a half-frozen stream with a thin crust of ice that someone's already cracked open this morning. The bucket fills with a satisfying splash. You pause to catch your breath and nearly slip on a patch of ice camouflaged by slush. The bucket swings wildly. You curse in modern English. The stream doesn't care. Historians agree winter chores in Viking Scandinavia were not for the weak. Water, firewood, animal care, gear repairs, it all had to be done every single day, regardless of the weather or your emotional state. No breaks, no I'm feeling a little off today. You work or someone else has to pick up your slack, and that's how you make enemies. By the time you trudge back to the longhouse, snow crusted on your eyebrows and numbness in your fingertips, you're already exhausted. A kid holds the door open for you, doesn't say anything, just watches, judging you, or maybe just waiting for you to drop the bucket. You don't. Victory. Inside, the fire's been revived. Warmth clings to you like a reluctant hug. Someone takes the bucket and nods. That's it. No thanks. No gold star. You've completed level 1 chore. You collapse onto a bench, or more accurately, the bench-shaped straw pile that used to be a corner seat. It smells like smoked meat and wool socks. You accept this now, then someone drops a bundle into your lap. It's firewood. Chopped already. You look up. Chopping. Number. You've proven you're a risk to yourself and others in that department. But kindling, yes. Your job now is to shave thin strips from the logs. Tinder for the next round of fires. You take the dull knife you're handed and get to work, trying not to shave your own fingers off in the process. The curls of wood spiral off, slow and clumsy, but enough to earn another nod from someone nearby. This becomes your rhythm. Shave, twist, drop, shave, twist, drop. And just when you feel like you might be mastering the art of being useful, someone says a word you do understand. Woodpile. They point outside. Again? Yes. Again. Your heart sinks, but outside you go. The woodpile is half covered in snow. You start stacking the driest logs, bringing them in a few at a time. Your gloves are soaked within minutes. Your boots are leaking. Your nose is running. But you're doing it. You're not dying. Yet. Quirky fringe fact. Norse children as young as 6 were given regular winter chores. Spinning wool, gathering eggs, herding goats. If you could walk, you could work. By 12, you were expected to contribute like an adult. And here you are, a grown human with a full resume and probably a LinkedIn profile, struggling to carry 4 logs at once while a 10-year-old jogs past with double your haul and a smug grin. After your 3rd trip, someone stops you. An older woman, she hands you a cup. It's not mead this time, it's warm broth. You sip. It's salty, simple, perfect. Your fingers curl around the cup like it's a holy relic. She says something you don't understand, but her tone is kind. Then she points at the spinning wheel. Oh no, she wants you to try that now. You approach cautiously. The wheel spins with a steady hum as she demonstrates. Wool becomes thread, bit by bit. The rhythm is precise, meditative. You sit. Try to mimic her movements. It goes poorly. The wheel stutters. The thread snaps. You tangle something that shouldn't be tangleable. She doesn't scold, just chuckles and gently moves your hands back into position. You try again. It's marginally better. Historians still argue whether men participated in fibre work as often as women in Norse society. While most of the weaving and spinning fell to women, in winter survival took precedence over tradition. Everyone helped where they could. And you? You're helping. Badly, but genuinely. Someone starts humming nearby. You join in softly, unsure of the words. You're not in the way. You're not a novelty. You're just there. The day, or what you assume is day, stretches on. You haul more wood, peel vegetables, accidentally step in something you hope was stew. You shovel snow away from the entrance using a flat board tied to a stick. Every job you do, someone glances, assesses, and either lets you continue or gently redirects you. You're not skilled, but you are trying, and that matters here. Eventually the Longhouse begins its evening routine again. Coals are stirred, stew is reheated, blankets are shaken out, you're handed another bowl, and you don't even hesitate. You sit between two kids who are whispering and giggling, and when one spills broth down your sleeve you barely flinch, because today you earned that bowl, not as a guest, as one of them. At some point you stop flinching every time someone hands you a sharp object. Not because you've grown confident, no, you're still deeply unqualified, but because everyone wields knives, axes and bone-carved tools like they're butter knives. Fear is inefficient here, you're adjusting. Tonight you're learning to carve. Technically, you were offered the chance to help mend a broken wooden spoon, but the spoon's soul has clearly departed, and now you're just slowly turning it into something vaguely spoon-adjacent, with a blade that has clearly outlived 3 generations. You sit beside a teenage girl who's clearly better at this than you. She's humming softly and barely watching her hands as she carves. Her spoon is an actual spoon. Yours looks like it's been chewed by regret and time. She glances at your attempt and smiles with the subtle generosity of someone who knows you're trying. Then she says something that sounds like horse nose. You assume it's a joke about your carving. You laugh. She laughs too. It's the kind of laughter that doesn't need translation. The kind that says, look at you, covered in splinters and still trying. Good enough. There's a quiet pride that grows here. No one claps when you finish something. No one gives you a sticker, but they watch, and they remember how many logs you carried, how long you stirred the stew, whether your stitches held. Every day here is a test, and someone's always scoring you quietly from the shadows. It makes you work harder. Not because you want to win, there's no trophy, but because it feels deeply satisfying to not be completely useless. You blow a curl of wood off your almost spoon and hold it up like a child presenting a crayon drawing. The girl nods, then leans over and, without a word, corrects the handle. You thank her with a sheepish smile. From across the Longhouse someone sneezes violently, then someone else does. You freeze. A few heads turn. It's cold season. Or maybe still cold season, since no one here has not been coughing at some point. You're reminded how close everything is, how there are no walls, no rooms, no quarantine zones. If someone gets sick here, everyone does. And there's no NyQuil, just herbs, steam, prayers, and lots of lying down and hoping your lungs don't mutiny. You glance toward the far end of the house, where someone is crushing herbs with a stone. The smell is sharp. Mustard seeds, maybe, or horseradish root. You've seen that woman before. A healer, perhaps. Midwife. She works with quiet precision, sorting dried plants into little pouches and stirring something thick into a clay pot over the fire. You ask hesitantly, "Medicine?" She glances up, studies you and nods. Then she hands you a sprig of something dried and brittle. You sniff it. It smells like pine and something vaguely medicinal. Like Christmas had a fight with your sinuses. You tuck it into your belt like a charm. A little superstitious? Maybe. But at this point you'll take any protective magic available. Here's your historical moment. Viking healers used a combination of herbs, poultices, and incantations to treat illness. Garlic, honey, yarrow, angelica root, these were staples. Some were grounded in practical medicinal properties. Others were, let's say, optimistic. If nothing else, they made you feel like something was being done. Historians still argue about how much of Norse healing was empirical versus magical. But in a longhouse with 25 people and 1 pig, a cold wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a threat. Every cough was a reminder of how fragile this whole setup really was. You sneeze. Once. A few heads glance your way. You give a thumbs up like, "Don't worry, it's just the smoke." They nod. But one man hands you a cup of something warm and bitter. You drink it. Instant regret. It tastes like moss and mistakes. But you say, "Tack," and mean it. Back near the fire, Irika is repairing a bow. His hands move with a grace you haven't seen before, tying sinew, checking for tension, smoothing the curve of the wood. He sees you watching and gestures for you to join him. You sit beside him. He hands you a sliver of bone and shows you how to polish it smooth with a strip of hide. You do. It takes forever. It's oddly satisfying. He explains something, slowly, patiently. You don't understand all the words, but you get the shape of it. This is his bow. This is his father's tool. This was his uncle's trick for keeping the sinew dry. This question mark. This is a firecrack in the limb. He'll fix it with resin. You nod like you understand all of it. You don't. But you get the feeling. The reverence. The sense that this isn't just a weapon. It's a story. A thread in a long, cold, smoky tapestry. Someone drops a piece of wood into the fire and it bursts with sparks. A few leap out and land on your blanket. You slap them away. No harm done, but you glance around. Everyone's watching. Not nervously, just attentively. Fire, here, is a friend and a predator. It gives warmth, food, light. But it also threatens everything. With one mistake, this entire longhouse could go up in flames. Quirky fact, some longhouses kept buckets of snow or barrels of water near the hearth just in case. Fire safety may not have been formalised, but it was deeply ingrained. You don't survive multiple winters in a wooden building without learning caution. You watch as a young boy carefully places another log into the hearth. Carefully. His mother nods approval. He puffs with pride. Everything is practice here. Everything is watched. Later, as people settle in again, someone starts telling a story. You know the cadence now, beginning slow and low, rising with energy, voices shifting for characters. Laughter punctuates. A gasp, then silence for the turn. You don't need to understand the words. The rhythm is enough. You close your eyes. Someone passes a horn. You sip. It tastes like ash and apple. You lie back. The floor is hard. Your hips ache. You're probably still lightly infested. But someone says your name, well, their version of it, and offers you a blanket. And in that moment, with firelight flickering on the beams and the wind howling softly outside, you realise something kind of insane. You're not entirely an outsider anymore. You're a walking cautionary tale, sure. You're still terrible at weaving, but you've stopped being the joke. You're just part of the weird, smoky furniture now. It's night again, though if you're honest, night has just become the standard setting. Daylight doesn't so much arrive as it visits briefly, like a polite neighbour who doesn't stay long. Outside it's dark, inside it's also dark, but now you know the longhouse by feel. You step around the creaky plank near the animal pen without looking. You dodge the low rafter that's nailed your head twice already. You know which corner stores the dry kindling, which patch of straw never quite dries, and which bench not to sit on unless you want a splinter in a place you don't want to discuss. You find your spot near the back, next to the dog, away from the leaky patch, not far from the fire but far enough that you won't wake up lightly roasted. You sit, stretch your sore limbs, and exhale slowly. The Longhouse exhales with you, a low ambient blend of fire, crackle, breathing, and the soft rustling of furs as people shift and settle. You're tired, but you're also wired. It's hard to wind down when your body's been in survival sponge mode for what feels like 300 hours. Your skin itches from wool and smoke. Your feet are stiff. Your face is somehow dry and greasy. Your brain is buzzing with everything you've learned. Names, smells, techniques, how not to accidentally insult someone's grandmother by mispronouncing the word for bowl. But you lie down anyway. The furs are heavy, rough. They smell like a lifetime of decisions you didn't make. You turn your face to the wall and breathe deeply. It smells like earth, like wet ash, like the inside of an old wooden chest that occasionally moved. Someone snores, you smile. You know that snore. That's the man who sharpens his axe with near-religious focus. And next to him, the baby who never sleeps through the night. And behind you, the old woman with the world's sharpest elbows and the uncanny ability to detect when someone's about to sneeze. This is your strange, temporary family now. You're not cosy, let's not pretend, but you're calmer, less alien. You've stopped asking what time is it, and started asking how much stew is left. You've stopped dreaming about showers and started dreaming about dry socks. Your dreams are still weird, but less panicked. Last night you dreamed you married a fish. It was surprisingly peaceful. You scratch your leg, still itchy. You check your blanket, still damp at the corner. You shift. The dog shifts with you. You accept your shared fate. Here's your final historical anchor. Viking longhouses weren't just homes, they were systems. Machines of survival. Every person, animal, tool and beam had its role. You didn't just live here, you functioned here. And to function you had to adapt or freeze or starve, and you adapted. Barely. Badly. But you did. You think back to that first moment, the slap of smoke, the wave of heat, the unfamiliar faces, the stew that tried to fight you from the inside out. You didn't belong. You coughed. You sweated. You failed to split a single log and nearly cried when your boot got stolen by a goat. But now, you know how to shave kindling. You can catch the tone of a joke without knowing the words. You know which end of the fire will cook stew faster, which herbs make your tea taste less like bark, and how to sneeze without offending the spirits of the Longhouse. You've survived, and the house knows it. No one claps. There's no medal. But when the last flame is banked, and the last voice whispers into silence, and the old man tosses one final glance across the dim, smoky room, he looks at you and nods, and that's more than enough. Now just let the noise fade, the rustle of straw beneath you, the slow, rhythmic breath of 20 sleepers and a snoring pig, the crackle of dying embers, all of it settles into a soft background hum. Outside, the snow falls in silent sheets across a frozen world. The wind still moans, but the walls hold firm. You're inside, sheltered, curled beneath layers of scratchy wool, next to a dog that's warmer than it has any right to be. Every sound blends together until it becomes something softer than silence. Something older. Your skin may itch, your nose may sting, but your heart is full of soot and mead and something strange and ancient you didn't know you'd find here. A rhythm, a pulse, a long, slow breath that connects you to every soul in this smoky wooden world. You don't need to understand the words anymore. The stories will carry you, the fire will keep you, and the Longhouse, as cramped and stifling as it is, will not forget that you made it through the night. So close your eyes. The cold can't touch you now. Let the air settle over your skin like a second blanket. Let your thoughts drift. you've earned your place in this dark, flickering dream. And when the sun finally returns, if it ever does, you'll rise again, scratchy, smoky, and maybe just a little bit stronger. Sleep now. You'll need your strength. The goat is already watching you.